Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Gold Goats and Guns podcast. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Tuesday, August 15th, 2017. Wow, North Korea. All right, I've got a lot to say about that, and I'm probably the only one saying it. And a lot of other people are losing their minds, and I don't think they quite realize what the plan is. I've got a couple of articles out there in the news space, one at Halsey News, one over, and a couple now over at Russia Insider. I just finished one that should be going through editorial this afternoon, detailing what I think was Trump's plan all along in pushing North Korea to its crisis. So why don't we get to that and then get to everything else that's happening, because we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Bitcoin's explosion to the upside, and we're going to talk about what's probably holding gold back from getting through 1,300. So let's get to it, because there's a lot to talk about. All right. I think the first bullet point here says everything you need to know. Last week when I was on with Halsey and on his live chat, we were talking about North Korea. And I really didn't want to talk about North Korea because I really hadn't thought about it very much. And the reason I didn't think about it very much is because it's either going to resolve itself or there's going to be a nuclear war. And there's, what's the point? Right? But during that discussion, it popped into my head that the only game that Trump could be playing by forcing the issue the way he has been was to run a giant con on North Korea. And I that's probably bluff, or con is probably too strong a word. But the truth is that when you look at what he's been doing and you look at the reactions since then, the only way to get a catastrophic effect, and I mean the word catastrophic in the kind of mathematical sense. I don't mean it in the, oh my God, in the hurricane hits Miami and wipes it out sense. I'm talking about, from an evolutionary biology or a catastrophic or a mathematics sense, is that a catastrophic outcome is one that is born of pressure, right? Evolutionary biologists talk about evolution not happening gradually, but in fits and starts based on tremendous pressure being put on a population, and then therefore the reaction to that is some extreme mutation that then a bunch of extreme mutations, one or two of which allow the species to successfully adapt to the new environment. And I think that that's what Trump has been doing here with North Korea and with China, and even to a lesser extent with the Russians. I think Tillerson and Lavrov have been talking behind the scenes about this. They've been seen talking together in multiple venues over the last couple of months. No matter how bad U.S.-Russian relations may be at the headline level, and certainly at the economic sanctions level and legislatively, I think that the two top diplomats of the countries do fundamentally get along and are trying to work around these issues and around the political realities of a progressive Marxist leftist class, that generation that just can't understand that we told them no. And I've got another article on Halsey talking about that in relation to Google. But what's important to understand here is that the point here was to truly force the Chinese to come to the table and make a decision about how far they're willing to back North Korea. It was also important to put the fear of God into Kim Jong Un, who no one has ever told him no. And so Trump just told him no. And so did Mattis and everybody else. And by ratcheting up the military discussion, by talking about potential strikes on North Korea and a potential regime change operation, which goes 180 degrees against what Trump said at his inauguration and what he said on the campaign trail and what I think he actually honestly believes. I firmly believe that at some level, if you push this kid far enough, he was going to fold. And I think that's what Trump was thinking. And we got confirmation of that this morning, because first he said he was going to nuke Guam, and then now he's not going to. And he did that after the Chinese said, okay, look, man, you are on your own. The Chinese and the Russians voted for expanded sanctions in the UN Security Council, getting a 15-0 vote. It was historic in that respect. Everybody was agreed. Trump picked the time to do this during Congress being in recess, where John McCain couldn't, rush legislation through the Foreign Relations Committee and try and tie his hands because he's back home with, dealing with chemo. The timing on his was really good. And I've spoken to some people about this who are very angry with Trump for going this route because they don't see they were disappointed enough with him so far as a foreign policy president that they couldn't see this as a potential outcome. And I think it's one of those things, though, when you really stop to think about all the ramifications of this push, it's all in Trump's favor. And don't just mean in the short term. I mean in the long term. And because what happened here is the minute he ratcheted up the rhetoric on North Korea, the neocons and the libs all came out in defending Kim Jong Un as some kind of victim. And John McCain's coming out and saying that Trump can't talk to him that way. That's too much. I'm like, well, what the heck with you, John McCain? For Christ's sake, you've been talking about bombing the entire frickin' world. You have no credibility on this front, so all of a sudden now you're a peacemonger? No one believes it. So, it's obvious what he did, which was, and it's obvious to me now that he, used effectively the geopolitical equivalent of the Socratic method. He's like, okay, you don't want me to talk to Kim Jong Un? Okay, fine, I won't talk to Jim. Well, I am going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to him in your terms. Give up your nuclear weapons, do this or this, or we're going to wipe out your country. And then, and because they're also reflexively never Trump and they hate him to the nth degree, they can't get behind him doing that. Even though that's what they want him to do in the first place. If that was Hillary in the White House, they'd all be like, look how strong she's being, and look how, what a great leader, and and it would all be, nonsense. The deep state doesn't want Trump to get the victory for here. They want to take the victory. They want the victory off. They're not going to get it, though. He's taking it from them. And now he's going to marginalize Bill Kristol to the point where he's going to be crying in his Morning Joe and all of this stuff. It's going to be great. You watch. There's not going to be a war with North Korea. And what Trump is going to have to do in order to get China to guarantee that North Korea is not going to pursue it, no longer going to pursue their part of the nuclear weapon that they and Iran are building by outsourcing half the labor to each other, is that China's going to have to guarantee that North Korea is going to stop. Russia's going to guarantee that Iran is going to stop, and the U.S. is going to guarantee that they're not going to attempt regime change operations against anybody, which puts paid what Trump said at his inauguration. That drives the neocons batty. It drives everybody nuts, but at the same time, we've denuclearized North Korea. Iran is no longer truly pursuing a nuclear weapon, and Trump can pull out of Afghanistan as the sweetener to get it all done. At that point, he wins on so many levels. It's with so much of the American population that there's nothing the Bill Kristol, Nancy Pelosi set can do other than fume impotently that they were outmaneuvered by, the orange moron. Which is why they, drummed up this, this ridiculous AstroTurf in Charlottesville, which now has led to somebody getting killed. And they're trying to, we're back to the Trump is Hitler meme. Because they don't have anything else. That's going to fall on deaf ears here. These people have lost their minds. They're now pulling down statues. They're now we're now on the verge of a cultural revolution here in the United States. And I use that term explicitly. We've got the left in this country tearing down Confederate statues, tearing down monuments to Robert E. Lee, who's never a slave owner. We've got all these things happening. What's next? We're going to have some kid go, blow up Jefferson's face on Mount Rushmore? Man, at what point does this end? Where does this go? Turkey has pulled out of Syria in that they're no longer backing rebel forces, and I'm using my air quotes here, rebel forces. No, they were never rebel forces. Turkey's realized that the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrian army are winning. They're going to run the table in Syria. They're going to run the table in Iraq, and any opportunity that Erdogan would have had to expand Turkey's influence or territory in the region is over. And he's now he's effectively suing for peace, buying S-400s from the Russians, withdrawing support of the rebels in Idlib, which will allow the Syrian army and Hezbollah and the quote unquote pro-Assad coalition can now go ahead and clean that area up, because Qatar is no longer supporting these guys. Turkey is no longer supporting them. They're done. That will collapse very quickly. They will all surrender in the next couple of weeks. You watch. Meanwhile, once that's done, now the Syrian army in the west, in Homs and Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, can now move towards taking back everything west of the Euphrates River. And then I fully expect at some point for the Kurds to be smart and realize that the Americans will screw them over, will abandon them when they have to. And if they're smart, they will sit down at the negotiating table and argue for more autonomy within the existing structures that are Syria and Iraq. The Russians have finally said, look, we're not interested in watching the borders change. And they've been pretty silent about that for a long time. But they finally came out this week and made it clear that they will not tolerate a changing of the borders at this point in time. Because what that means is if the Kurds get an independent state, then the likelihood of the United States putting missile bases all over that region and pointing them at Iran and Russia is very high. Even with Trump in power, he still doesn't have control of everything. All right? So that's what's going on geopolitically. It's not great. That feeds into whether or not we're going to get a bottom in the dollar here. I'm not sure that we are. I think we're still looking at another impulse up on the euro. I think there's still too many things geopolitically that are dollar negative and euro positive, especially as we come into the German elections in the next few weeks. And I think we're getting a little bit of a dead cat bounce in the dollar, which also feeds back into gold backing off from 1,300. And it looks like we might even getting some topping action in Bitcoin today. And I'm going to speak about that at length because I think there may be something bigger at work in that. So let's get to the charts and then I'll get you out of here. All right. So gold has now made 3 attempts to get through 1,300 and it's failed. This morning, yesterday, the sell-off started and it's extended this morning, though we're trading at around 1280 as I'm doing this about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday the 15th. We'll see how things go for the rest of the week, but gold really needs to at least violate 1,300, even if only for a bit, just to see what kind of, just to see if there's enough, now that we've, made a couple of runs at it, now, are there enough buyers to take it above 1,300? With the war drums receding in North Korea, now we're going to find out whether this is a real move in gold or if this was just war premium. We'll find out. We don't know yet. Okay. That's pretty much all I got to say on gold at this point. If it doesn't break through 1,300 this week, if we at least don't get a violation of last week's high, we're most likely going to retest the low here at around 1,260. And then we could even see that, and we could even be setting up a 2-bar reversal for a small correction in the dollar to the upside. We don't know. We'll see what happens. Okay, but we'll watch this and play itself out. But the general idea here is still that there should be one more washout in gold because there's going to be a reversal in the dollar at some point. I don't know when. It could be next month. It could be in December. It could be in January. But it's going to happen, and it's going to mark a major bottom in the dollar index and a major top in the euro. And then those positions are going to reverse. And we're going to get a short-term, we should get a short-term drop in gold. And then everything, as Europe starts to blow apart, then gold and the dollar will trade in concert along with stocks. And that's the setup in 2018. For the most part, the rest of this year is going to be positioning as to what levels we're going to have that play out from. Is it going to be above 1,300? Is it going to be closer to 1,200? That will determine what the final bottom looks like in gold and in silver. Now, speaking of silver, we have a very interesting situation in silver. So while gold refuses to best any significant resistance, not that I would consider 1,300 significant resistance, it's more around 1310, 1315. But it's that, kind of round number bingo that gold always does. So third time's usually the charm, but that's not good that it didn't yesterday. Okay, so looking at the silver chart, what I want you to note here, and I've noted this in a couple of other places previously over the last 9 days, and I apologize for not getting a podcast out earlier. I've been incredibly busy feeding all sorts of other things that I stopped at like 12:30 this afternoon and went, oops, I haven't done a podcast. Let me do one. So I put one together real quick. So what's interesting here is that we've got an engulfing bar here, which was nearly a reversal signal, right? That we had the high and the low here were bigger than the high and the low here, right? So that's an engulfing bar, and it was bearish. So this is a really high probability setup of a 2-bar reversal and a continued washout in silver. We didn't get that. What we got was back-to-back weekly engulfing bars, which have only happened 4 times in the last 5 years. And every time they've marked a major change in the market, usually in the direction of the second bar, almost always in the direction of the second bar. And so what this could be here is this week's action could just simply be some pullback and some natural short covering, some natural long liquidation after a big short cover, what people feel is a short covering rally, when actually it's not a short covering rally. It's actually the beginning of a new move, and it could be possible. This 15-14 bottom could be the bottom in silver. And if we get a break, so we're either looking for a break above 1,300 in gold, or we're looking for a break above last week's high at 1724 in silver. And if we get that at some point this week, especially if the dollar shows any strength, then I have to bring my timetable forward as to when the ugliness is going to start happening in Europe. I don't think that's the high probability setup here, but it's always a possibility. All right, and so the next thing to look at, and what else, and that's what feeds into the next thing, which is that this is what's going on in Bitcoin. The Bitcoin chart is going parabolic. This is the weekly chart. This is a parabolic uptrend, a continuation uptrend. This was already parabolic, and then we got a noisy 6-week downtrend, and then boom, once we got past all of the hard fork Bitcoin Cash stuff, right? Now we've got this huge move from 3,000 all the way up to 4,500 last night. Now the big question is, we've already pulled back $300 or $400 today. Is this the beginning of a topping pattern that goes along with a dollar bottom, weaker gold and silver, and move into different types of and out of safe haven assets, right? Weakening in the bond market, weakening in the gold market, and weakening in the Bitcoin market. And if so, then it's just a basic everyday risk on, risk off trade. Excuse me. Now, we add to that the incentive of a monetary system and a banking system that's scared to death of the blockchain, doing away with most of their services. And ultimately that's what Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of these cryptos are going to push for. And the Russians already understand this, and they're literally remaking their entire banking system on the blockchain. It may take them a couple of years, but they'll get there. So they're incentivized with Bitcoin becoming mainstream, and I'm seeing Bitcoin tops 4,000 on the MSN homepage. Most people in America don't know what the hell Bitcoin is, but they've heard of it now. Now that it's moving up, hundreds of dollars a day, the mania begins. And now the question is, is retail beginning to move into Bitcoin while the bad actors, because we're hearing reports of spoofing happening on like Bitfinex and some of the other exchanges, how much money would it really take for a professional trader working at JP Morgan or Goldman or, for the Fed or whomever to sit down, with a $50 million account and spoof the crap out of the Bitcoin market and and push it way beyond where it needs to be right now, while it's starting to gain mind share, and then crash it by 75 or 80%, exactly the same way it did in late 2013, early 2014, where it went from 1,100 down to 250. And that kept a lot of people out of Bitcoin for years. Kept me out of Bitcoin for years. And I know and I understand it. So, I wouldn't put it past, those people to be running a psyop on everybody. They're incentivized. They got motive. They got means, motive, and opportunity. Occam's razor tells me that somebody's doing this. Right? So all that means to me is that if we do get a top out here in Bitcoin, that would actually be really healthy. I wouldn't say a 90% correction or 80% correction would not be healthy. Bringing Bitcoin down from 4,500 to 1,000 would be bad, right? But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think you'll see Bitcoin drop from 4,500 or maybe top out of $5,000, and then we might get like one more impulse move higher, up to $5,000, and then correction back to 3,000 would be healthy. That's 3,000 is the breakout point here anyway, right? So here's your tops, right around $2,900, $2,950, $3,000. That'd be really healthy to see that kind of thing happen. Pull some of the speculative froth off the top. Get some of the weak hands out of the market so we can, really get real, honest to God, and long-term holding investors moving into the crypto space, not just scared for their lives or chasing the dream, So. All right, so that's what I've got going on. So you want to, always, in the immortal words of Jim Sinclair, you sell a rhino horn and you buy a fishhook. So when things starts looking like a rhino horn to the upside, like a parabola to the upside, you want to be selling into that, and you want to be buying when it looks like that in reverse. And right now, if I were to show you this chart of Bitcoin in reverse, as opposed to BTC/USD, but USD/BTC. You would be going, oh my God, what a great opportunity to buy. I should be converting Bitcoins into dollars. And that's what I would be doing. The contrarian investor. Blood in the streets moment. It all depends on your perspective, right? So I think we're getting close to a blood in the streets moment in the dollar. I don't know if it's going to be this week or next. It could be October, but it's going to happen. All right, that's what I got, guys. You guys take care. We'll talk to you soon. Keep your stick on the ice.